Right, this isn't going well. It's making horrible clicking noise when I turn it over. The plugs are firing at the wrong time. I lost a part which I had to make out of a bit of coat hanger. It's not going well at all. But there is good news out of this. And you think I'm talking about the XC restoration engine, and I'm not. I'm talking about this. I'll show you what I'm talking about. And this is what I'm talking about, this thing here. You can see it's firing on the upstroke. So I couldn't get the timing very well done, but at the end of the day, these are great teaching tool. You can actually get V8 versions of this. Little camera, all sorts of bits and pieces in there. It's an absolute treat. Anyway, let's have a look at a slideshow. And kicking off, part 22 of the XC restoration is this rather lovely XB GT Falcon. It was quite a high spec car with a wind-back sunroof, a factory one of course. It was sandstone, I think, and walnut glow. It was air conditioned, but it didn't have power steering, which was quite unusual. It also had the cloth seat inserts. He bought that after he sold his GXL, and it went like a cut cap. I think it was really, really quick. And there he is. I think he's 19 years old there. I was 14 at the time, and it was a wonderful vehicle, and at least I missed it. He didn't like it that much. He actually replaced it for a Holden, but at the end of the day, lovely car. So I thought you might like to see that. And we'll follow that up with the GXL Trio. Of course, mine was the green, the cool mint green one with the globes on it there. The brown one behind that was Neil McClymont's car, and he had a lovely, I don't know what colour it was almost a platinum coloured one that was absolutely brilliant. It was quite a basic one. It started and ran like a stock 351, but it went about 50% harder. It was a really, really quick car, and of course that was involved in an accident, and he bought that brown one there. Now the red one you see with Neil's and my car is Peter Stanton's, and he was an aircraft pilot. He ended up flying commercial passenger planes, all sorts of things, and he's retired now in Arizona, I think he lives, with a lovely classic motorcycle collection. And of course we went off to the Ford Motor Company. We sort of, looking back now, I'd probably not do that, but at the time it was really good fun, and a lot of people do that sort of thing to showcase their cars, and of course it makes it all the more shameful that Ford is stopping manufacturing here in Australia. I think that's dreadful. But that car of mine was pretty good. It wasn't that quick. None of those were. Well, here comes Peter there. There's Peter Stanton. He's taking a photo of of the three cars. Mine wasn't that quick. It had a fresh 351 in it. I put rings and bearings through it, that sort of thing. Neil's wasn't a patch on the one he had before that. Peter put an Edelbrock, what's a bad photo? An Edelbrock carburetor and that sort of thing on his to sort of pep it up a little bit, and it was a 4-speed manual. The red one was the 4-speed manual one, and it was a low mileage car. It was beautiful. Now there's mine with a little Sigma up there. That's the car I eventually turbocharged, and that went like hell too. There's the front view of the GXL. You can see my beloved XD Falcon behind it, and of course coming up now is the engine. After I sort of put it back in, I freshened it up and that sort of stuff. So I hope you enjoyed that little trip down memory lane. I've got a few things like that to show you, and here's a confusing one because it's got the original wheels on it. I don't remember putting those on. Yeah, just trotting doggy do. But I've been working in here. You can see all the dust where I've been cutting bricks. I've just got some sand on the floor. Some of them aren't very steady, but it's a shed floor, so I mean, just got to keep sweeping all this muck around and getting it into the gaps and all that sort of stuff, and then I'll just put a bit of concrete around the edge, sort of down there, just to sort of box it a little bit. For cutting these things, they're dead easy to cut, and they're only quite soft. You can see there's only a few sort of screenings and bits like that in there. They're very, very easy to cut. As for cutting them, just an angle grinder with a diamond. Just a diamond bit on there, and that's done all that outside paving. Better get into this monster and put it away. Love this guy. The trouble is I need to drive it a bit more. I've just not been driving it much. Just all this other stuff that's been happening, it's meant I'm very, very busy. got a squeak in the front now, which it didn't have before. Must be those cheap spring saddles I had. I'll use the better ones on the XC. I'll show you the sort of thing I'm talking about. And of course, just a word of warning with the cheap spring saddles. These are the nolothane ones, and they rotate very easily. I can't do it with one hand, but they rotate very easily. If you remember on the XW, the rubber ones, even the spring had trouble overpowering them before there was weight in the car, and they're rubbish. They're squealing now. So the cheap ones are around $59 a pair online, and at Burston I think they're probably about the same. These are about $140, but worth every cent. So don't bother with the cheap ones, just use these. I'm trying to film something, but I can't get it right. Right, I'm just packing up a few things here. It's a Cleveland sump in there. Also these rocker covers. These are going to be for the XD engine. And I want them packed up and kept dry because they do rust very easily. So I can sort of put those in there. Because if I leave them in the shed with condensation and all this sort of stuff, or even in here, they'll just get surface rust all over them. I've got these lovely FE big block rocker covers, and that's the colour I'm going to do the engine in this car. I'll get it matched, because at least then I know what colour I'm getting. I'm not going to sort of shake up a rattle can, put it on and not like it, because from my experience in the past, they're a little bit too light, the rattle can blues, and these are again are in great condition. So I'll put those away as well after I've matched them. But this way, I'm not going to be ready to build the XD's engine for probably another 18 months, I don't reckon, but this way I can sort of keep them safe and tape them up and forget about them for now, not worry, if you know what I mean, so that's all good. And this will keep them in nice, good condition until I'm ready. I've got the timing cover under there as well. So I've just boxed up these 390 covers just loosely so I can get them out to get them matched. This was the box that the Sansui Hi-Fi thing I bought came in. And it came with a newspaper, USA Today. And I remember reading USA Today when I was in America 20-something years ago. It was a long time ago. So it's always nice to sort of read and see what our American friends are doing. Well, there's political stuff in here, obviously, and we're not here to talk about politics. They've got a few things to worry about, I'm sure, and so have we with our political structure, but this is not a political channel. This is all about cars. And I suppose we've lost our car manufacturing industry when that's political. But anyway, keep calm, Peter. Drink tea. So that's what I'm going to do. Right, well, I'm getting to the stage now where I want to get some crack testing done, some additional crack testing, which means the wheels. Now, I don't know what they're like. They're 40-year-old wheels. They're the same as Fairmont gear rims on the GXLs. And before I put tyres or get them powder coated, that sort of thing, I need to get them crack tested. Now, once that's done, if there are any that are cracked, I'm not going to bother using them. I'll just buy new wheels and tyres, 15 inch or something like that. But if they are crack free, then I can obviously use them. Now, the issue with old wheels, old alloy wheels, is if you do get a cracked one, they're probably going to be about $50 each to crack test. I don't want to keep buying them and finding, you know, some of them are cracked and some of them are okay. You know, it's not something I want to do. I want to get it done and dusted, put tyres on so the car can roll. Now, I still haven't finished the front suspension. I still haven't finished the brake lines, which I started a few months ago. And so I've got to look at all that too. Now, all being well, if they're not cracked, I'll go to the blaster, get them blasted, and I'll also get the bonnet hinges done because they've been painted badly and they're very hard to rub back, and also the upper control arms. I've got everything in those to put them in the car. I've got the bushes and I've got the pins and all that sort of stuff, so that's all good. I just have to order some new lower control arms. I'm not using the old ones. And so there's a whole lot of things that I need to start. I'm going to the engine reconditioner today with the rims, and that way I can check on how that clearancing thing's going as well, because I want to get the engine done. So it's taken a little while, but it should be all good. Look at that. Pretty manky. I hope he doesn't want them media blasted first. I don't really want to spend money on stuff that's junk. Just been running a couple of errands. I've got the wheels back from the media blaster there. You can see how lovely they are. They've sort of been done behind as well. Now I can put these straight on the car and drive around. They'll look good for about 300 k's or something, and then all the brake dust will settle into there. They're probably a little bit rougher than they were originally, but I'm going to get them powder coated. They're good enough to put clear powder coating on, although there is a few little sort of bits and pieces in there, I suppose, so I might just get them coloured. I'm not sure what to do with that. I'll go and get some advice on that. Bottom hinges, obviously, I have to touch it with gloves because I don't want it to all bare metal. I don't want to sort of mark them up, so they've got to be painted. And of course the upper control arms. Now I'm going to powder coat these, but in these sorts of areas in here it'll tear out when we put the bushes in, so they might have bungs or something to go in there. I'll go and seek advisement on that, but I didn't want to get new ones because the only ones you can get are the ones that have the grease nipples on, and they're wrong for this car. And of course the other thing I've got done are the brake lines. I get these done professionally and fitted. There's 2 lines there with 4 fittings. It was $20. All up, these were sort of $30 each, the wheels, and I think it was $150 for all the blasting, including these other parts as well. So I'm fairly happy with that. Well, I'm ready to put these brake lines in. They've sort of marked up the firewall a bit, but that just comes off with a bit of polish. Now these are all ones that I've made that I have to sort of put in position. The clutch went on board, obviously, and this one's got a bit of tension on it, so I've got to muck around with that a bit. And they're held on with these things. Now, you only get one sort of crack at putting these in. And you sort of insert them in the hole and squeeze those 2 bits together, which sort of separate at the back and hold the lines against there. You need to make sure you bend them in the right position, because if you don't and you start trying to tweak them afterwards, these tend to come a bit loose. So I need to make sure I get those in. I made a couple of mistakes with this when I put it together. Obviously, you'll remember that this is an XB Falcon firewall in an XC, so I should have blocked that hole up, and there's 2 here for the handbrake. The XB handbrake mounts like that. The XC one obviously is down here, so I didn't block those off, but it doesn't matter, it's not the end of the day. But probably the most important tool you can have in your toolbox is a mobile phone. And I'm just using this. I've just taken photos of somebody else's work they've done with regard to where the clips go and how they're routed and this sort of thing. And I just took it off the computer screen inside. I've got a computer set up in here, but by the time you log on, get on the network, all this sort of stuff, it's just too much mucking around. You've got to move a whole lot of stuff around. It's just not worth it. And also you've got your light and that sort of thing, and you can just see what you're doing and get photos along the way. And the one I'm shooting with actually is my son's Galaxy Note 4, which he's given me because he's got one of those new iPhones, big ones with the 6S Plus or whatever it is. I don't know what they are, but he didn't want this. There's no SIM card in it, but it still works fine as a camera, so I'm stoked. So I'm going to start putting this stuff in. I've just got to tweak it a little bit, get it all bent the way I want it to be, just so I can sort of hold it against the firewall, put those clips in, and I can call that sorted. And then after that we'll put the power steering lines in as well. I want this to the point where the engine bay's finished, so that when I get the engine sort of assembled and tested, I can just drop it in. Alright, so I've stuck these lines in now. I was fussy to get these ones looking semi-okay, because they're the ones you see. That one there, what is it, the rear one that goes along is a little bit wavy, but I'm not too fussed about that. Once the engine's in and the air cleaner's on and everything, you won't even see that, I don't think. Now, no matter how careful you are with those clips, those retaining clips, they do pop out. And of course, the one down there that you can see where the little screw is, came out, so I've just sort of screwed that on there, and I've screwed it underneath as well with those little clips, which makes it a much sort of, I don't know, sort of holds into the body a little bit closer. These are the power steering lines, and they're not in properly yet, they're just sitting there, and this one's been joined at the top here, which I don't think is factory, I'm not sure. It might be, that's off the ZH Fairlane. Now I might buy a new one. I think when you buy the new high pressure lines, it actually comes with the rubber bit already on it, which goes to the back of the power steering pump, which is around here somewhere. This one over here is the low pressure return, and this one of course is the same as the one on my XD, and there's a sort of a, there's meant to be a hole there, it would have been one of the ones that was blocked off, a sort of a loop at the front here, which acts as the power steering cooler, and then of course it re-emerges through here and then goes back to the pump. So I need to look into lines before we put the engine in as well. Now early XCs use a Thompson type power steering pump with sort of a large canister with a little pull-out dipstick on the top. And I know the early XDs had the C2 type Thompson one, which was the plastic body one with a little twist and pull type cap on them as well. And they ran up until the, I think EBF and LBH use those as well. Maybe even AUs, I'm not sure. I'm going to be using a Sagnor type, which is what the Holdens used, and also the 6-cylinder Ford used them as well. They're sort of a teardrop shaped pump that's quite thin in its cross section. I've got one sort of stashed over there somewhere. I've got to get it out. And so I have to make sure when I order this high pressure line that I've got the right fitting on the back, because I know on the C2 Thompson one, which I'm not sure if Late XC's used them, they probably did, they had a swivel type fitting on the back. It was a different type of fitting to what the Sagnor used. I've just got my daughter's car there for now until I bring the MG home. XC's full of junk. I'm just cleaning up out here, and I was preparing this little starter for collection to say goodbye to it. But I'm sort of having a look. It's an absolutely mint shell. I mean, why wouldn't it be? It's 1996, but the problem was there was a big wow in it here, but also this damage down here where it's all smashed up. Now, I think what's causing that is the fact that it's pushed in here. If I cut that out, I reckon it's all straighten out. I've got the replacement one here off the other car. The thinking is, I reckon if I just sort of leave that bit, cut it down there, just that bit there and onto the sill, just a little piece, it might come good. So of course I've marked out where all the structure is, so I can just cut that out anyway. Well, that's what I was going to do anyhow. There's another beam coming down here, but I might ignore all that and just cut this piece out first and see what happens. Because if it's fixable just with that, that's not a big deal. And of course, inside, that hole there needs to be blocked up. That's where the main wiring loom for the 96s, the 96 and 97 came through there, so I can weld that up. Because the 98s come in through here, one either side, there and over there, and the holes are a bit bigger. And the only other thing is this, I cut out of the other one as well, and that's the gear shift support, and it's got additional sort of threads here and here for the airbag, airbag module. So it's obvious where it goes. It's got the same sort of tongues either side. So I mean that just goes straight in. And of course there's another one here. And that, where does that go? I can't remember, it's so long. That fits in, I think, like that. You take that out and you put that in, and that supports the other bits and pieces. So if it turns out to be a pain, I'll throw it out. But I've got everything here, so I can just put it together like a big Meccano set. It's a really, really easy job in terms of reassembling it. And it's just fixing that bit over there. And of course I've left, well, that's my son's idea of humour. He's written pens on it. It's supposed to look like it says something else, which it does when you first see it. I left this here to determine gaps. Now, what's really good about these cars is I just threw this door on in 10 minutes. And this is Japanese quality for you. The gaps are beautiful. It's not like one of the old Fords like what we're used to doing. That's a 10-minute install, if that, and the gaps are perfect. So very, very easy. But I left these two panels on here so I can determine the gap when I change this rear quarter, which was the original plan. But I don't know, I'm going to just cut this bit out, and if it repairs easily, I'll keep it, just put it back together. Right, well, I want to talk about a few products today. These are just a pair of riggers. Had these for 8 years. Great for picking up engines and any sort of heavy mechanical type work. These are on special at the moment. At least Bunnings had a pile of these out the front on a pallet for $9 or $8 or something, so I bought a couple of pairs of those. This little torch, now this is just a 9-volt battery with a LED torch head in it. And these are great. You never have to buy batteries for these. It's got two types of light settings. And you never buy batteries for these because if you're anything like me, you change your smoke detector batteries every year and there's always plenty of juice left in them. And so they sort of sit around, but you can throw them out, I suppose, but you can use them in things like that. They're great. The other thing, that was from Costas Bolts. That was, I think, $9. And also Prepsol. Now, everyone uses Prepsol. Wax and grease remover, if you like. If you keep your can and get it refilled through Milsom's, it's a bit under $4 just to get that refilled. But I'll need more of that, obviously, when I start doing the doors. Now, I've already spoken about media blasting. I use a bloke in Palmerston Road in Ringwood. This is the scuttle, and I never showed you before. This was off Jason's XB, and it was originally a sort of a bronzy colour. I'm using gloves because I don't want any finger grease to get on it because it's raw. I've got to edge prime it. And it was a mess, and you can see how clean he's got it now. These things are quite expensive to get done, around $70, because they have to do it extremely gently. It's very easy to distort these when they're media blasted, but that was what essentially looked terrible, is now very, very serviceable, so I'm very happy with that. And I also want to talk about the powder coater, and I've had these powder coated. I had them done shiny or gloss. People get them done satin, but I like things that are shiny. But anyway, that was minuscule in terms of cost to get those done. I've got those pins plated. I've got new bushes there. I've got the spring saddles, and don't forget I was talking about these before. They're the Nolafane ones, so they're sort of movable. Much better than the rubbish I've got in the XW. Of course, they just bolt on like that. So everything's ready to go there. I've put the ball joints in a box underneath this table. So I'm very, very happy with that. And I've sent brake backing plates, all sorts of things to the powder coater, because I just can't be bothered trying to clean them and paint them. This is much stronger, more resilient, harder wearing, everything. It's much better to get them powder coated than it is to paint them. But the mistake I've made was powder coating these, and they look terrible. It's supposed to be a pearl silver, and it just looks like grey primer that's a bit shiny. Now the upside is these are very washable when they get brake dust, but I don't know that I think I'd prefer brake dust on these than it would be driving around with wheels like that. Now he's done a fair job, but there's a few little marks and stuff that was in the aluminium, or in the alloy I should say, which is the reason I powder coated in the first place. I should have done them clear. Despite those little marks, and there was a couple of tiny little dirty marks in the corners, I should have just done clear. So I'm going to see if I can get them stripped. I don't think I can. I don't think they'll blast off, and if they don't blast off, I've just wasted the wheels. I think they were $42 for the 4, and the media blasting was $30 per wheel. So we're $120 to media blast, another $30 a wheel to powder coat. So $282 they owe me. If I have to call that a loss and just get a set of American torque thrusts or whatever, I will. But I'm really disappointed with those. I've made a heck of a boo-boo, but at the end of the day, you live and learn. I'm a bit down on myself though, because I should have known. And the sample was just a tiny little one on a little Dulux colour card. So, yeah, not loving those at all. Don't like them. Other thing I'm doing is gearing up to put these hoses on. This is the front power steering return line or cool line. I've just started taking paint off it. And of course it goes through there. Same on the other side. This is an XD Falcon one, not an XC one, I don't think. I was wrong initially. I thought they sort of came out and did a loop. I've seen that somewhere, but it wasn't on one of these cars. So I'm sort of still working with that. And I've been slowed down pretty much because of other stuff I've been doing with regard to the shed and the house flooding and all that sort of thing. Now I still haven't cleaned the bench up. That's still a bit of a mess, but... Oh, hang on a sec. But aside from that, everything's pretty clean. I've been doing lots and lots of cleaning up, including bringing out my beautiful 390. I should start that again. Of course, all the Starlet stuff which was behind here has now been moved to sort of all the other places. That's my little MGB. I bought that from my mother's house because she's selling her home. It's a nice little car in that I've sort of, looks dirty I must say. I've restored the interior and done all these leather covers, which are all nice. I did that in another video, and redid the dash, the wrinkle finish, which is what they were. I also sort of tarted up the engine bay some time ago, and I don't know, bought a new coil and leads and a AccuSpark electronic ignition, which made a heck of a difference to the car. It starts and doesn't sputter and all that sort of stuff now. Revs a lot cleaner. It's really, really good. That's the coil bracket off a Wolseley 1560. Originally these were sort of buried down there somewhere. Put a new oil cooler on it, sticker kit, all that sort of stuff. Did up the heater box, but there's a problem with this in that when I moved it and brought it here, it was throwing oil out of the rear main. It was pouring out. And so what I need to do is pull the bonnet off, whip the engine out. That's a nice little job that. It's not a big one. I've never taken one out of an MG, but it looks fairly simple. I'll leave the gearbox in the car and just lift it out and do the rear main. One thing I never did when I did this engine bay was paint the engine. I left it in and sort of put a bag over it. and did the rest of the engine bay, so there's bound to be a few little bits and pieces I've missed, so I can redo that. Get a new heat shield for the exhaust, make that look a bit better. It's a sweet run of this car. It's got great oil pressure, no knocks, good power, everything. But the engine could do with a little bit of a spruce up in terms of just the cosmetic side of it. And of course we need to fix that rear main oil seal, so I'll do a separate video on that. And I'm using a touch-up gun because it really doesn't matter what the finish on this is like. Just wanted to keep the overspray down in here. It's just important when you do these, just to keep swiveling the hinges to make sure you get all the surfaces covered. Painting these is a real pain, but a bit of extra time. I'm just sort of touching where I haven't quite reached before. In there, just everywhere. Another thing, if you take these to the blaster, you need to make sure that you use compressed air to blow out, like change the position of the hinges and pivots. Really blow them out with compressed air to make sure you get rid of all that dust and debris. But I think that's probably pretty much done there. I think I've got it all covered. Just stops it rusting, make the paint stick a bit better. I think we're good, and this scuttle's really, really good. There's a couple of little dents along here. That side's straight as an arrow, but I'm really happy with how that's turned out because it really did look like a trashy piece before. I'm just mucking around with this spring. I think it's like a thermatic type spring, and it's sort of bent up in the centre, so I'm just going to sort of push the middle of it down between two sockets in here, like that. Try and level it out a bit. That's pretty good. That's not bad actually. And what that does is it sits on the clutch hub. And I think it rotates this thing here to decide whether the fan comes in or not. That's just the viscous coupling. And of course this clutch didn't have one, it dropped off, and I went and got this one. So I just want to check with a heat gun whether that's the case. I think when it gets warm it sort of starts unwinding. I want to figure out which way it goes though. Alright, so it winds itself in further. Alright, so you get it warm and it winds itself in sort of counterclockwise. And then when you cool it off, it should start retracting. And here it comes, it's coming back. I just saw it move. So I'll just double check that. It goes like that. This goes over, and then we'll just squeeze these two together. Just so they can't get out. That's good. I should give that a bit of a squeeze too. That should be good. Now, in the old days we used a fixed fan. These turn lots and lots of air. This isn't the original big block fan. This is off the XW 6-cylinder engine, the 221. And I had it on the 351 engine on the engine stand. It turns a ton of air. But of course, the higher the revs, the more drag they produce, and they're not so efficient. The XCs on the air-conditioned cars like mine had a flexi fan. So the rigid sort of spine, if you like, with sort of flexible blades protruding, and of course centrifugal force flattens those blades out, so they're more efficient that way. They're quite expensive to buy. I prefer the clutch fans. These things, they've got sort of the best of both worlds. They turn a massive air, but of course they freewheel once that little bimetal strip there is heated up. So I'll get this blasted and powder coated. I'm really over painting things, and I can just bolt it back together like that, and I'll store it on this engine just to get it out of the way, get it off the ground, and that'll go on the car. At the end of the day, if this does work out to be faulty, which I don't think it is, this clutch, it turns beautifully and it's stiff, which is what it's supposed to be. A new one of these is around $200, around about $200. So that should be cool the way I've got it there. Other parts to use on the restoration, obviously, that's our lovely dolled up gear bag, which is all dirty again, all dusty. Sagamore power steering pump, what I was talking about before, the teardrop shaped one. That's that sort of thing. Obviously, it's got a fixed fitting at the bottom there, which is, I think, what they supply with the aftermarket power steering pumps. That's off of Cleveland some time ago. It was in remarkable condition. And of course, I'm just going to use that. There's the alternators of choice are the Bosch ones, and the reason I like the Bosch ones, these are both 55 amp. Now that's off a different car, or at least one of them is. I think it's this one here. It's a bit shorter in this section here, but that doesn't matter so much because you can just use an aluminium spacer, turn them up on a lathe in about 10 minutes. They're fairly easy to make. I'd probably be inclined to use this one here. It's going to turn a bit slower having the bigger pulley than this. This might go berserk, but at the end of the day, you just buzz these off with a rattle gun and you can change the pulleys. They're really, really good like that. But the reason I like these, and the reason I always use them, is they're really, really easy to change the regulator. It's just 2 screws there. On the back of each one, they pop out. And they're like $30 or something for a reg. They're not much at all. This is the one I used on the engine stand with the junkyard engine. That's the exciter wire. So somebody's actually tapped into that later. I'll probably be inclined to use this actually. That's got a little suppressor thing on it. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think I'll go with this one. I might change the pulley though. But they're both good. Like, I know that works. I've tried that and it works really well. I've got these on all my Fords, except, although I haven't got one on the XW because I wanted to keep the original regulator. It's also worth noting that most of these you get at 35 to sort of, I don't know what they come in, 65, 85 amp I think is probably the biggest. You can get 120 amp ones now, new ones. I think they're just shy of $200 and they're internally regulated as well, but I just like the old school ones. And of course I won't use anything on the car that uses an awful lot of power. It's not going to have electric fans, a big stereo, nothing like that, so they'll be more than sufficient. And this is another one. This is just sort of sitting here to keep that belt on this engine here. Where is it there? That's another internally regulated Bosch unit. That was on a Holden 6 and it had a rather crummy paint job on it. But the XW's one is the original one that came with the car. And the reason I put that there, of course, as I said before, is I wanted to keep that regulator functional. So it turns out that regulator over here was faulty. It was throwing about 15 volts into the battery. So that was one my brother bought for his Mustang and he hasn't bothered using it. He's used a different one altogether. And of course the original one just sits on the garage wall as an ornament. And I made a joke about email in 1969 at the time when I put that on the car, but that actually isn't any good. You can adjust them, I suppose, but it was just easier putting a new one on. Just throwing a little bit of clear on these hinges, just to protect them, make it a little bit better. I've painted these in Mitsubishi Gentil Silver, and it's a lovely colour in that it's not that horrible stark silver that you see coming out of little rattle cans. It's actually almost a bluish silver, but it's really, really appropriate to the sort of stuff that I do. And of course, I'll use it on. I've been using this can for years. And of course, I've done the wiper motor in the same colour. It's a really, really good colour. I use it for all the silver bits of painting I'm doing. I use it on the XD's wheels. I'll use it on the fuel tank on this car and other bits and pieces too. Right, doing a few last minute little bits of paint. I've got a run on that. Whoops, got a run on here. These are just the stub axles. I've got them screwed into the trestle just with a little plaster screw down like that. I don't want to drop these things for obvious reasons because they've been all crack tested, that sort of thing. Got the rest of the front end stuff to put in, although I haven't got the lower control arms or the springs yet, but I've got everything else, including these. Now these are off the XW, these things here, and they were in a box, and when I was going to get plating done I just chucked them in the box, just because they were mangy old things from the XW when it was new, and they have come up absolutely brand new. They're incredible. And of course I've got the tie rod ends as well, and they fit. So, well, they do. I tried it before. And so I've got all that stuff to put on, so I'll have steering. So I'm going to pack up for now, so I'll stick all this in the car in the next video. Right, so there you have it, the end of the 22nd part on the XC restoration. Now, in the next one, I want to put the front end together. I want to start putting that together. I need the car rolling before I put the engine in, because the way I put the engine in is to jack it up, obviously roll the car into it, lower the engine down into position, You should really have, when you're doing that sort of thing, don't look at me, what I'm doing, because it's a little bit dangerous, I guess, being by myself. But you should have two other people with you when you put engines in cars. Of course, you've got one at the crane, one guiding, and the other one spotting to make sure you're not going to hit anything. These cars some cars have a detachable support top on the support panel. This one hasn't, so you've got to raise it quite high. It's not as bad as a 6-cylinder though, because it's a 351. It's a little bit shorter. But of course, I'm still waiting on the engine to come back. That's taking a lifetime. But at the end of the day, that's not too far away, or at least it shouldn't be. And we can really start moving with this car. So it's a little bit slow for now. I've got to go and shoot a Patreon video now, which I don't feel very comfortable about. But whatever the case, hope you've enjoyed it. Drive safely, enjoy your classic, and I'll see you later.